here. Welcome to another guitar show, twin lead special.
Andy's favourite episode ever.
Finally, what are we on? Like episode 20 or something?
Sure, episode
Finally, you're the one with the Gibson Les Paul, and I'm having to bend his arm to play some Thin Lizzy. Come on. So this is going to be a background on harmony, which is one of the three things that makes music. We had rhythm, melody, and harmony. Put simply as well, if you know any chords on guitar, you're already learning about harmony. But we're going to be talking you through this more from a lead point of view, but introducing it, I think, through chords as well, because that becomes so important, and somewhat from the major scale as well. Is there anything you would add as a background to harmony, just in general, Thomas?
Well, just that you need to have a good, not even a good, just an understanding of the major scale that we're coming from, and then you'll see that it's pretty much the same intervals. So an interval is the distance of one note to another, and basically when we're talking about the major scale, we're going a second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and octaves. We're going to be basically using two of those pretty much on this, thirds and fourths. That's what makes up most of our intervals.
So basically, when you're learning Thin Lizzy, you're also learning cool music theory.
Yes,
it's really great.
Who would have thought?
We will also be covering other songs and things, but we'll be covering, it will be a full tutorial of the lead lines of The Boys Are Back in Town, so stick around for that after the bit of spiel that we talked about at the start. That one is in the key, Boys Are Back in Town, of A flat, which is a non-guitar friendly key. I believe that's because they tuned down by half a step, so a lot of the chords would actually be A. But when we look at the major scale, position 1, or any position of the major scale, it shouldn't really matter where you are on the neck, because it's the same patterns that you will learn, and more importantly, it's the same degree of the scale, which is what I'd like to focus on. So what do I mean by degrees of the scale, and then the most common harmonies? Thomas, can you take
degrees of the scale, somewhat go into what I was mentioning about the intervals, so our seconds, our thirds, blah, 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 all that. So we got the notes of the major scale. Each of them is numbered. One, in this case, is A flat, because that's the key. And once we just do out all those notes, that'll give us each of the degrees. So the second is B flat.
Why would we number them rather than going A flat, B flat from there? Why would that make it easier?
This allows for transposition.
So if you learn it in one position, and if you learn the theory and the working behind it, anyway, even if you learn it on a piano or a flute or whatever instrument you've ever played before, you can transfer it anywhere on the neck, because it kind of sounds the same. If that is something you've struggled with or something that's new to you, diatonic chord harmony is the lesson that you need to know, the chords in a key, because it essentially refers to the same thing, but it's easier to hear, I would argue, perhaps in chords than this. But what are we talking about? Well, we have major scale, for example, position 1. And we can think of that as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. How does that relate to harmony? Well, the most common harmony is thirds. And if we put that on the major scale, when I play note 1, you could play note 3. And if we then play kind of to a rhythm of 1, 2, 3, 4, we suddenly harmonise. That definitely sounded like a really bad TV show theme. Like for kids shows in the 70s. Absolutely. We learn our ABC or something like that. But it is, and that is a common, or one of the most common harmonies. If the melody is 1, 2, 3, the harmony could be 3, 4, 5. Let's play that together. 3, 4. That is the theory behind it, and that would always kind of work on its own, unless the chord underneath it is saying something different, or you get to a note it all comes down to what chord's underneath. But for example, if we go through and I get to, for example, 5, so let's go 5 notes. Ready? 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I'm on the 5, the 5th note there of the major scale. Now say that was back to the 1 chord, and that harmonises with that, but your melody is going the major 7, that that kind of says more kind of G7.
Yeah.
And it doesn't say 1. So if you play that note at the same time as I play, that doesn't kind of work anymore. So sometimes with harmonies, as we will see with Thin Lizzy, the harmony wants to be a 4th above, perfect 4, because of the chord underneath it.
Matching the chord.
That is what happens a lot. And sometimes your harmony note will move, but the melodic note doesn't.
Yes.
That is an instinct that needs to be developed, and will be developed with you learning this sort of stuff and studying pieces and looking at harmony of the chords that you know. But also it will start to become obvious and happen naturally. And remember, if you ever play a bum note on guitar, you're only ever 1 fret away from a good one. So where were you playing the lower line of Thin Lizzy? I mean, the first 3 chords, we won't look at the other power chords really, but that's the chorus, and that's a lot of the underlying chords, which are an A flat chord,
1,
B flat chord,
2,
and then a D flat chord.
4.
4th fret, 6th fret, and this is where it does get confusing.
Yes.
Because you rightly said that's the 1, 2, and the 4. But yeah, when we're talking about notes
frets,
and stuff, so we will link to helpful tab. That's the best way around that. Teach your lower lead line. This is a great way to cover harmony.
So I'm starting on the 6th of the A. Oh, going 6, 8, 6 on the D. There's a couple of doubles. Oh, very nice. There's a couple of doubles hits in here. And then the 3rd time, it goes up to the 8 on the D. So just 4 notes.
Which is somewhat because of the melody and somewhat of the indication of the chord underneath. You want to teach the second part as well?
Sure. So the one that Andy started off playing was... Of course, we've got a little run up into it. So now we're talking about 6 on the D, 8 on the D, and 5 on the G. Up to 8, 6, 5.
And that is the 1, 2, 3. But it has a lower harmony for most of the song, which is why this that last part is a 4th. They're always different degrees. And
Yes.
they kind of
This was tricky.
People come across this when they learn lines that kind of use this 6th thing.
Yeah.
Where sometimes you're at the same fret and then sometimes you aren't. I don't want that to be tabbed out or anything. That's not what we're covering in this lesson. But you'll notice that when you cover any pairs of notes, that sometimes it's like, this is at the same fret for the harmony, and then suddenly it isn't. You know, it's one of those things.
And the same note on either side. So, for instance, this is a 3rd.
Yeah.
But then
sometimes
taking the same
that's the
note
right harmony,
and taking that note up the octave. We
Yeah.
call that a 6th, so that's the trickiest. It's the mirror kind of image of it.
And again, we could dive around into the theory of this all day, but this part of the song and then the next part is really beautiful
Really
example of that and how the melodic note can change underneath. So towards the end of the song, it does do higher harmonies as well, which we can visualize very easily. And initially, by thinking of our chord shapes, I would say this one. That goes 1 to 3. And then the next one, 3, 4, 5. And even if you've covered kind of position 1 of that major scale, that's what it's using. A little hammer on there, I would do.
Yep. That's it. And the vibrato key as well.
But then we have to go to the octave there.
I played the wrong note.
No, it still kind of works. And then the last one I would think about of a kind of D shape, a D triad, which is the octave, I believe. He breaks his own rules by playing some other lead guitar parts. Really cool. But the middle section, or I guess it's more towards the end, the kind of middle 8 of this. Shall we do that one together? Because it was one of my favourite lines and we might butcher it. But let's give it a go. 3, 4. Playing the notes and then giving an indication of the chord underneath. Just essentially just the 7th of it.
There's no chords actually playing underneath this.
No, it's the bass line doing a very walking bass kind of thing. So yeah, there's no strict chords for that, but there's an indication.
We're outlining the harmony.
Absolutely, we're kind of playing the chords there. We're playing notes. I played it in this position so that we can visualize just the more normal kind of triad played by. But then, that's the one to be aware of, and that's what gives it its kind of beauty for me. So I'm confusing people by playing both lines at once there. But I mean, that line, just on its own, that line.
That's lovely, isn't it?
That line. It's just a really simple
gorgeous
melody, and then the harmony to it brings all the kind of emotion to it.
Yeah.
Which harmony does, we don't have kind of that kind of thing without harmony. That tension and release of it, and this is such a good example of that.
Well, tell you what, let's look at the notes and compare them to see what the intervals are of just that little bit.
Yeah.
So you
start off. We got a third and a third, because that's just the triad.
So that's
1, 3, and 5.
C, D flat.
Then this one comes from the indication of the chord underneath.
The dominant 7. I would think of it as a dominant 7.
Yeah, absolutely.
So a tritone, but still, a fourth. We're talking about an augmented fourth, so thirds and fourths. Fourth, and then a third.
And back to a third, yeah, okay.
So thirds and fourths again.
And then finishing off with 2 power chords after that. But it's amazing the amount of emotion
that you get out from it.
You essentially get from the chord that is the key of the song, the 1 chord, the dominant 7th of that chord, to the 4 chord. It's like where all the tension and release.
Yeah.
It's all about the 1, 4, 5, kids. Okay, shall we have a little bit of fun now and play some Iron Maiden?
Yeah, go on.
Never
thought I'd do this.
Maiden. I've twisted his arm and I've got us to do the Trooper. Let's do it. No, I will make you metal over this. Come on.
Okay.
We're going to do it again, and then you're going to metal. I'll get it right soon. One day.
Ridiculous.
I literally... yeah, guys, harmonise to that. There, we did it.
You got
that
it
only
now.
took about half an hour,
Oh.
which you may have seen some of, but that's why I'm actually crying now. Okay,
Wow, that was good.
that was the Trooper, which has a very fast twin lead part, but which most people can actually play because everybody's gone. My apologies, viewers. Thomas here.
So
After being a fan of Iron Maiden through your youth,
we've spent about 20 minutes just laughing about it.
find it quite amusing. now. But this is the
Okay.
two notes from kind of an E minor chord, I would say. That's the main part of the harmony. What is your part? Sorry.
It's a
Oh, so it's like a long way lower, but essentially, that's what I would be visualising. This E minor chord, which is played over the rhythm part to
chug.
every Iron Maiden
yes.
song ever.
It's just a fast.
It's the gallop, isn't it? It's absolutely
fast
a gallop.
Led Zeppelin.
Do you know what I've just spotted? When I went there, my thought was, why are they so far apart? And when I played it there, they sort of became too pentatonic-y,
didn't
which
fit
is
me, no.
there's no. It lacked its musicality, and it went a bit Pagian.
It did, didn't it?
You know the part, don't I've just thought you. Do you know that part, the harmony to it?
Of course I don't know that part.
No, I've heard you play it.
Of course I don't know that part.
That was you.
Producer
Okay,
Chris.
I was like, we were in this.
Of course
room.
I don't know that part.
But yes, it went a bit too pentatonic, which kind of is as well. But they
I
can
think
kind
because
of.
it's major, it kind of gets away with it.
Can
a
we
bit
just
more.
quickly demo the minor pentatonic scale, but with the same idea of this harmony, and just you've
God.
got to hear how it goes really kind of oriental, I guess. So we're essentially a minor third apart. Oh, are we
Fourth
going?
and fifth. Because as soon as if we do that,
Okay.
yeah.
So yeah, so
Okay.
3, 4. Sorry, I didn't come back down, but that straight away, it sort of loses all its musicality and goes really oriental.
Yeah.
It's quite an
Are
oriental
you saying
scale.
Oriental music isn't?
Well, it is of a certain style.
No, I know what you mean.
It must be a reduced scale. Like it's
Yeah,
all,
it is, yeah.
If it's pentatonic based, then it just the major scale has all the modes in it as well, so that it naturally has a lot more harmony and this kind of content. I mean, as well as a lot more hammer and flick off opportunities.
Well, what's the interval we're doing here?
So that are we a sixth then?
Yeah.
That's where I would come across this kind of thing.
So G all the way down to B is a sixth.
Yeah.
Third going the other way.
And it could easily go higher.
Let's try it as a third. Oh God.
And all we're doing when we're picking that out is just we're starting off with a note of the chord and then playing the same riff, but then using the if there's a higher octave there, you know, if it's not a third to go to the to the chord tone, you jump up a fourth.
Yeah.
That's the same
That's
concept.
it.
So that's something fun to play around with. I'm going to end this now before we end up in fits of tears again. Please subscribe to both our channels if you want to see this ridiculousness continue. And we will be here every Sunday, hopefully keeping it together better than this. I told you it would be a good one at the start, didn't I? I told you I'm looking forward to this. More Twin Lead to come, just to get this reaction from Thomas here, because it's amazing. We will see you next Sunday. Bye for now.
See ya.